Hi, this is Marty Leckletter, the product manager for Leap, with a short video on improvements we made to the Leap rules editor, which allow you to combine and or conditions. There are many cases where you need to combine and or conditions. In this example, we're going to take a look at a job application. A candidate is eligible to apply if they meet the following conditions. They must have a bachelor's degree or at least 5 years of work experience, and they must be a citizen or have a valid work permit. So how do we implement this? Here's my job application form. I've got a section where I ask who the applicant is, a section below that for determining eligibility, and if they are eligible, I have a piece of text in the section that says, great, you've met the eligibility requirements. And I'll make note of the ID on that. It's called text eligibility. And if they're eligible, I also want to show this third section, which is job application. So you can see the name of that up there. That'll allow them to continue on. Now, there's one rule in the form already, and if you're not familiar with rules, you set them up by clicking on the rule icon, and because this one's blue, it's telling me there's a rule that involves these two widgets here. So I'll come over here to see what it is, and it's called Are You a Citizen? And it's quite simply, if it equals no, then we show this other question. Rules are shown both in the shorthand, which makes it more readable, as well as in this edit mode. So when you're creating it, you see something more like this, which gives you the different selections and displays the widget and different values the way you would see it in the form. So what we want to do is add some more logic to determine eligibility. And we're going to start with some OR conditions, and we're going to start with years of experience. So we'll click on that. But first, what we want to do is give this rule a name. We'll call it job eligibility. And we'll say that if years experience is greater than or equals 5, or the alternative would be that you have a bachelor's education or a postgraduate education. So we're going to assume that if you've got a postgraduate, you also have a bachelor's degree, which I think is safe. So that's all in this first block of conditions, and you have the same operator here. So in this case, they're all joined together by OR statements. If we want to mix an AND in with these ORs, then we have to add another condition group, and it's going to default to AND. If this first block was strung together with ANDs, then this would default to ORs. So we'll continue on, and the second condition here is are you a citizen? That's got to equal yes, or you must have a valid work permit. So that's the logic which will determine the eligibility, the job applicant eligibility. And if that's met, what we want to do is display this text, which I pointed out is called text eligibility. So we're going to show that. And then we also want to show the job application section. So we'll apply that and close it. Save it for good measure. It's always a good idea. And then we'll give it a preview, and we'll see how it works. So let's say I have a high school education and I have 2 years experience and I'm not a citizen. And I don't have a valid work permit. Well, I'm not seeing that I'm eligible. Maybe I have a valid work permit and I have 6 years of experience. Well, no, that works. Okay. Maybe I have a bachelor's degree and I have 0 experience. Well, that's good too. Maybe I have that and I'm not a citizen and I don't have a valid work permit. So you can see that this is working just as intended. Now, to make this a little bit more elegant, it might be nice to inform the user that they're not eligible if they've answered all these questions and they haven't passed the eligibility criteria. So we'll go back and take a look at another example of this app, which has been built out a little bit more. In this case, I have a piece of text that says, sorry, you have not met the eligibility requirements. And the text is called not eligible. And then I've got a second rule which I added, which is not eligible. And this one's a little bit different. We've got some OR conditions. I'm sorry, some AND conditions here. Clicking on not eligible. So if you have a high school education and less than 5 years, well, you're not meeting the mark there. Or if you're not a citizen and you don't have a valid work permit, you're not meeting the mark there. So that's when we show this text. All right, so it's set up in a similar fashion, but different logic. And we'll give this a go to see how it works. So no questions have been answered so far, so we don't have any test that's been complete, whether it's valid or invalid. So we'll say high school, and we'll say 5. They're not a citizen, and no, they don't have it. Nope, sorry. Let's say they have a valid work permit, and it's 5. They meet the requirements, so we're seeing the blue text. Maybe they have a high school education, and it's 4. So nope, that's not good. Maybe they have a bachelor's, 0, and they don't have a work permit. So you can see that this is working, and just with that additional logic, it's just a bit more elegant. So in summary, you saw how you can combine AND and OR conditions in Leap rules now to build dynamic forms. And you can do this without having to write logic in JavaScript. And this is available starting with Leap 938 and Domino Leap 117, which both shipped in December of 2024. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.